It's a long and sometimes expensive learning process to figure out how to design a model railroad for operations. I've made plenty of mistakes and spent a lot of money fixing those mistakes in my journey. Today, I'm going to help you avoid some of my mistakes.
This video is brought to you with support from my patrons on Patreon. These videos would not be possible without them, and if you'd like to join the Patreon community, you can follow the link in the description below and join for as little as $1 a month.
Okay, today's video will be broken down into two sections, designing and purchases, and I'll be using my layouts and my journey as examples of both mistakes and inspiration. Now, if you have designed and built a model railroad already and want to learn some easy ways to operate it, I'll link the videos that I have done on that topic at the end of this video. Okay, let's hop into design. The design of your model railroad is the first thing you do in the process of building your model railroad. And this part is very important if you plan to run switching and other operations on your model railroad. So the first thing that you want to do is figure out what your layout represents. Model railroads are built as slices of the real world, whether you're modeling a real or fictional place. Now, in terms of actual track planning, I have a video that goes over all of that, and I will link it at the end of this video as well. Your layout can really represent two things. One is a section of a main line that has both industries to switch and through trains going from one place to another. The other is a destination. This can be the end of a branch line, a town, or a cluster of industries. You can also combine these two things, which is what I did on my layout back there. I model an N scale, which means that I can get a decent amount of trains running in a small space. So I'm able to run large manifest and unit trains through, as well as running locals out to switch the industries on my layout. If you do go this route, you may want to consider putting a yard on your layout. It can be a large classification yard if you have the space, or a small local yard. Mine is a mix of the two. Now, for this type of system to work, you need a place for your trains to go to and from. This was the first lesson that I learned as a model railroader. Trains do not operate or exist in a vacuum. The mainline trains need to be able to get their goods on and off of the layout. This can be a staging yard, or a track cassette that you can remove, or just a spur off the edge of your layout. Trains need a place to take goods to and from, so this is very important. These trains also need a way to get their goods to their destination. If these are locals, they may be heading directly from that staging area to the industries to do their pickups and drop-offs. If they're mainline trains, they could be just stopping long enough to drop off some cars at a yard or on a siding for a local to pick up, or a yard switcher to sort. As an example, on my layout, trains come in from these two exit points, and they can pull into the yard lead, grab any cars and drop off any as well, and be on their way. It's then up to the yard switcher to organize them so that the locals can make their deliveries and pickups. To do this efficiently, you need a few elements within your track plan. The first is that place for your trains to enter and exit the layout, as I just stated. The second is a runaround track of some kind. Mine is located here with the double crossovers at each end. This allows locomotives to run around a set of cars and position themselves properly to switch those cars out. A few things to note that I have learned about yards is that if you want a yard, you will want a runaround track close to, if not directly in it. Also, for small to medium model railroads, a yard should be able to hold a minimum of 15 to 20 cars to be effective, but this of course all depends on what you want to accomplish with it. A few more things to note about layout design is that when it comes to orienting your turnouts of your industries, if a runaround track is not convenient or practical to install near that, try to orient the turnouts to be facing the same direction. This will make switching a lot easier. Now, this is a rule that is made to be broken. I actually deliberately broke it on my layout to make switching one of the industries significantly more difficult. Before we move into purchases, we do need to talk about two other huge elements of track planning, and those are track radius and track grade. For those that are new, track radius is how tight or wide a turn is, and track grade is how steep the track goes up or downhill. Track radius can affect a lot of things. Having too tight of a radius can limit what types of locomotives you can run, and even make your track more prone to derailments. I've made this mistake. For example, I had a set of passenger cars that kept derailing on a radius that was too tight because the body mounted couplers on the locomotives just couldn't function properly and they kept bumping. Track grade can also make it more difficult or impossible for trains to scale a hill as well. Minimum track radius for a locomotive changes based on the type, but typically diesels can tolerate tighter turns over steam locomotives. Now, when you get into O-scale and things like Lionel, where the locomotives are more articulated, this can change because the locomotives are designed for tight radii. Now, as for grade, you can calculate it with rise over run, and it is measured in a percentage. For me, a good rule of thumb is to try to stay below a 2.5% grade. Now, this can be fudged a little bit, of course. For example, I had to do a 4% grade on part of my layout so that the track plan would work, but I do have issues getting up that hill on my layout. Keep all of those things in mind when purchasing. The first thing you'll need to look at buying is track, and there are two main varieties of track: those with no attached roadbed and those with a plastic roadbed. Now, I'm not going to go into specific brands other than saying that I use Kato Unitrack on my layout, which has a plastic roadbed. Each track brand has its own pros and cons, and I'm not going to go into specifics on that. Just know that plastic roadbeds will limit you more on what you can design, because using track without a roadbed, while more difficult to install because you have to install the roadbed separately, opens up the use of flex track and more customized track plans, which may better suit your operations. Okay, the whole reason that I went through track radius, track grade, and track types is because all of this affects what type of locomotives you can run on your layout. Now, in terms of operations, different types of locomotives do different things on a railroad. The further you go back in time that you are modeling, the more specialized locomotives become. When you're talking steam locomotives, you have loads of different wheel arrangements and sizes, and they were made for specific tasks, such as switchers, locals, and mainline locomotives. There was quite a variety. Plus, you may want to incorporate a turntable if you're running primarily steam. As you get into a more modern era, locomotives become diesels and they become less and less specialized, which gives you more freedom to pick which locomotives you want. A great example of this is when I was looking for a road switcher for my layout, I was trying to find an N-scale Norfolk Southern SD40-2. This was proving pretty hard to find without spending a lot of money, but I did notice several used SD60s on eBay. So I went to YouTube and searched Norfolk Southern SD60 switching, and I was able to find a video of an SD60 road switching, and boom, I went and bought what is now NS6603 as a road switcher on my layout. Another specific purchase that I made was my Jeep 60 that works as my yard switcher, and it has been a little workhorse. The other purchase area you will probably focus on when designing for operations is your rolling stock. I have a simple rule. Once you've figured out what your industries are, buy enough rolling stock to have double what you need to fill every industry with the proper car type. This will give you enough to fully switch out each industry. You can then go from there on, adding what you want to your fleet. Now, in terms of era, this is where it's entirely up to you, and I'm not going to tell you what to do. Some people will tell you that you need all of your cars to match the era you're modeling perfectly, and for some people, to do that perfect miniature model of a specific era, sometimes down to the day, is a lot of fun for them, and that's great. But a lot of people are also going to tell you just to have fun and buy what you want. This is the camp that I'm in, but I want to say that if you are doing operations, you do want to try to have at least the proper car type for your industry, and that's just something that you may want to consider. It doesn't have to be era specific or even, specific like types of box cars and things like that, but you want to have at least a car that's somewhat appropriate for that industry. Model railroad operations add an entire layer to the fun that is model railroading and give you something to do with your model railroad once you're tired of running it in a circle. I hope this helps when designing your layout for operations. Thank you so much for watching. Check out these videos right here for other things in regards to operations and design. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, and happy railroading.